I'm going to read from my book, Motherless Soul, today. And I'm going to start with the very first paragraph to give everybody a general idea of what the book is about. Chapter 1. On the 80th anniversary of her mother's death, Emily wrote a letter to a hypnotist. Her mother had died when she was 2, so Emily's only memories of the woman were imagined events inspired by old photographs. She'd polished those conjured recollections to the point where she could feel the thick fabric of a cotton skirt against her mother's strong thigh and smell the ivory soap on her mother's bare arms. But as Emily's body grew slow and soft, and the reality of her own mortality became clear, she found that her lifelong desire to know the person from whose body she'd come was overwhelming. She thought that a hypnotist might help her reach into the back corners of her mind to make her dream a reality. Emily contacts Glenn Wiley up in Charlottesville, Virginia, and she heads up there for her first regression, and that's the excerpt of this novel that I'm going to read today. But in the process, she discovers a lot more. She discovers that she's had many past lives, and that in each of those past lives, she's experienced the same tragedy, the loss of her mother at a very young age. To prevent that cycle from continuing, she has to discover who is going to be the mother of her soul in the next life, and she has to prevent that tragedy from occurring to that young woman. Emily is now up in Charlottesville, Virginia, where she's met Glenn Wiley, and she's about to undergo her first regression. Emily drove back to Glenn's place the next morning. It was a wet day with a constant light rain interspersed with short downpours. Fortunately, Emily missed the heavy showers, but the humidity caused her legs to ache, which made the climb to the apartment even harder than the day before. She was wearing the loose clothing she brought per his instructions, a long skirt and a large, long-sleeved sweatshirt. She had a pair of flats on, but Glenn had her remove them before the process began. He took Emily to a guest room and had her lie on the bed with no pillow. He explained that to pull memories of her mother, he would make her recall a specific event in her life that had occurred before her mother had died. Then he told her to stare at the ceiling. Over the years, a nail had worked its way through the spackle that had originally covered it, and now its head lay exposed on the white sheetrock. It made a perfect point of focus. "Your eyes are growing tired," Glenn told her. "Your lids are heavy." She was nervous at first, but Emily let that feeling flow out of her. She tried to put herself somewhere else, in a gentle memory from her past. She knew that was the wrong thing to do. She should have been focused on what Glenn was saying, but Emily needed to relax, and using her imagination was the way she did that best. Emily's eyes were closed so she could put a different face to Glenn's soothing voice. She chose Clark Gable, her favorite actor when she was a young woman. She imagined the scene in Gone with the Wind when he was dancing with Scarlett, then after paying $150 in gold for the chance. There were other actors Emily liked, but Clark Gable was the man who came to her imagination on the days when her solitary life made her feel more lonely than independent. And now that she was too old for the silliness of sexuality, she found she was still not too old to think and feel. "Look back in time," Glenn said. "You're a child. Your mother is near you. You're learning to walk, to take your first steps." Emily let Rhett Butler drift away. She tried to imagine clouds or cotton, enormous spans of white, soft nothingness. "Your mother's helping you," Glenn told her. "She's coaching you through the process. You want to cross to her, to be near her where you feel warm and secure. She's calling you." Emily was starting to see her there. The dress she was wearing was white muslin, almost the color of the clouds she was wrapped in. The memory didn't jump into her head as she had expected it would. Instead, it gradually seeped its way in, becoming clearer and more defined as each instant passed. Her will is overwhelming. All you want is to please her. Then suddenly the memories poured into Emily's head as if a dam had burst. Her mother was there, the woman Emily had spent most of her life imagining. She wasn't calling her, as Glenn had suggested. She was standing across the room, looking at Emily and smiling. Emily was looking back at her from the odd perspective of a child sitting on a floor, yet she could tell how beautiful her mother was, and she could see the warmth in her eyes. The experience was very much like normal memories, only more intense. Emily was looking through the eyes of the child she had been, and feeling what she had felt back then. But at the same time, she had the perspective of the woman she had grown into. She could see her mother. She could think about how she looked and sounded, but she also thought about herself and what an amazing experience she was having. Her mother walked across the room and lifted Emily to her feet. Then she stepped back and left her daughter there. Emily's legs were wobbly and weak, but she was able to stand. Her mother held her arms out to her daughter and called her name. Emily wanted to be upright and tall. She wanted to be big like her mother. But more than that, she wanted to hold her mother, to smell her skin, to wrap her arms around her mother's leg and rest her head against her soft thigh. Emily had to reach her mother to feel secure and protected. She took a step in her direction. She wobbled a little more, but she wasn't going to stop there. She took another step. Then her legs gave out, and she sat down abruptly. Her mother came to Emily and bent down. "Good, Emily, very good," she said as she lifted her daughter once more. Her arms were powerful but soft, like a gentle river that's always there, always flowing. Yet in the back of her mind, Emily knew that always was the wrong word. "Try it again," her mother added. Emily stepped back and tried once more. This time she took 3, 4, and finally 5 steps. She fell into her mother and was home in the arms of the woman she'd loved and longed for her entire life. "When I count to 3, you will wake up," Glenn's voice called out from a lifetime away. "You will remember what you experienced. 1, 2, 3. Emily woke up in a stunned state. The experience had been so emotional that it had left her groggy, almost as if she were drunk. She worked her way to a sitting position on the side of the bed and stayed there for a moment, breathing heavily as she tried to comprehend what she'd just been through. "Are you all right?" Glenn asked. She looked down at her hands in her lap. The wrinkled skin on her wrists and her palms and across the backs of her hands and her fingers was pale pink, with blue veins peeking through and a couple of dark blemishes. They were the hands of an old woman, and they were empty hands. The memory of her mother reminded her how empty they'd been throughout her life. She tried not to cry, but the tears started rolling down her cheeks. She brushed her hands across her face and then looked down at the floor as she rubbed the back of her neck and sucked in a deep breath. She'd lived a life without her mother. She had gone on from that tragedy to lead a life with few friends, and after her father had died, without any family at all. No one cared who she was or what she had done throughout the years she had spent in the world. And now she had a picture of what she'd missed. She felt what it was like to watch someone take pride in the smallest of her accomplishments, even the simple ability to walk. Emily forced back her sobs. "I'd always known my mother was beautiful, but she was much more. The experience was like finding the comfort of a warm bed after a hard day, but it was 100 times more than that could ever be. This was about being part of a person in a way I can't remember ever experiencing. I know those feelings were in me. That child was me, of course, but it wasn't a me I remembered. There were so many new, strange, wonderful experiences in just the short burst of time you gave me. All I can say is thank you. Thank you so much." Glenn leaned over and hugged her. He didn't hold back and hurt Emily a little, but she was so excited she didn't care. "Can we go again now?" she asked. "Not now," he told her. "There's a great deal of emotional strain in an experience such as this. You need to work up to longer sessions, just like an athlete needs to get in shape before a game. But you are clearly an excellent subject, so it won't end here." "You'll send me back?" she asked. "I was serious about going back further, back into the memories of your soul. You have my word on that." "And you have my word that I'll be back on your bed tomorrow." Glenn laughed at how Emily had phrased herself, but she could tell he was looking forward to what they were about to go through.